from glowing orbs and vanishing men, to cryptid wolves, mutilated corpses, and an ancient valley that some locals still refuse to enter. Buried deep in Canada's northwest lies a gorge so remote, so untouched, and so feared that even the most hardened explorers approach with quiet caution. They call it the Valley of the Headless Men. A cursed, uninhabited stretch of wilderness nestled in the Mackenzie Mountains of the Northwest Territories. It spans more than 11,000 square miles. There are no roads, no towns, and no cell phone signal. To reach it, you must fly in by float plane or descend by river if the rapids don't swallow you first. But for those few who have braved the journey, miners, hunters, even park rangers, many never made it back. And those who did return often came back changed. Unexplained lights in the sky, massive beasts that no zoologist can identify, decapitated bodies found miles from camp, with no blood, no struggle, and no explanation. This is not legend. These events are real. They're documented in old Royal Canadian Mounted Police files, trapper journals, and oral histories passed down by the Dean and other First Nations for generations. To them, this place is known simply as the Place of Spirits, a place you enter, but may never leave. So what exactly is happening in Nahanni Valley? Why are so many lives lost and bodies found without heads? And why has this place, despite over a century of horror, remained almost entirely out of the public eye? In this episode, we take you into the wilderness, to Canada's Skinwalker Ranch, and to the ancient silent valley that has earned its name the hard way. Long before gold prospectors ever set foot in the valley, the Dean people had already marked it as forbidden ground. They told stories of strange beasts, unseen spirits, and a land that did not welcome the living. They gave it names that roughly translate to the place where people go missing and the land of evil spirits. To this day, many elders won't speak its true name aloud. Among the most feared legends is that of the Wahila, a massive wolf-like creature with broad shoulders and a white coat like snow. It's said to move silently through the trees, its eyes glowing like ice, and its arrival is always followed by death. Then there are stories of the Nuklook, short, humanoid beings covered in dark hair. They walk upright like men, but are said to speak a language no one can understand. Several trapper reports from the early 20th century describe run-ins with these beings, and an overwhelming sense of dread when they were near. To the Dean, Nahanni was not a place you camped or hunted. It was a place you avoided, because the few who dared go in were either driven mad or never seen again. The warning was clear. Whatever lives in the valley, it does not want to be found. The first official reports of something truly wrong came in the early 1900s. At the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, two brothers, Willie and Frank McLeod, entered the valley. They believed rumors of a lost gold mine buried somewhere deep along the South Nahanni River. They were experienced woodsmen, well-equipped and used to hard conditions. They never came back. A year passed with no word. Eventually, a search party was sent out, and what they found changed the story of Nahanni forever. The McLeod brothers' canoe was discovered upright, stashed carefully along the riverbank. Their camp was still intact, but just a short distance away, in the willows, they found both bodies. The corpses were fully clothed. Their rifles were untouched. There were no signs of an animal attack, no tracks, and no blood trail. Most disturbing of all, both men had been beheaded. Their heads were never found, not a single bone. The coroner's report, filed with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, was inconclusive. It offered no theory, no cause, and no motive. Just a body count. The press had a field day. Newspapers dubbed it the Headless Valley. And over the next few decades, the name endured. But the McLeods were only the beginning. In 1917, another prospector, Martin Jorgensen, set up a small cabin by the Flat River. He wrote letters home, raving about the promise of gold. Then, silence. When another search was mounted months later, Jorgensen's cabin was found burned to the ground. Among the ashes, they found his body, and like the McLeod brothers, his head was gone. This was no bear attack. The body was charred but not scattered. His supplies were untouched, and no animals in the region decapitate their prey. By now, rumors had become warnings. Trappers began referring to the area as cursed. More deaths followed, some confirmed, others only whispered about. But the pattern held, isolated, headless, and never solved. Some were found dead, others simply disappeared, their tents intact, their fires still warm. No sign of any struggle, just gone. Official records kept things quiet, but among bush pilots, Mounties, and old river men, the legend of Nahanni grew darker. They told stories not just of disappearances, but of strange lights, giant creatures, and tracks that ended in open snow. The deeper you go into the Nahanni, the less the forest feels like any ordinary wilderness. Even veteran trappers spoke of a strange silence, not peaceful, but watchful, like something was always nearby, but never seen. Over the years, sightings began to emerge of a creature unlike anything documented in Canada's wildlife records. Massive, white-furred and silent as snowfall. Some said it looked like a wolf, but far too big and too broad, completely unafraid of humans. This creature became known as the Wahila. Unlike a pack hunter, the Wahila moves alone. Its tracks are wide and heavy, often spotted crossing frozen creeks or appearing beside vanished camps. There are no droppings, no scent trails, and when it kills, it does so cleanly. In the summer of 1965, American adventurer Frank Graves led an expedition into the South Nahanni Valley in search of Sasquatch, but instead had a chilling encounter with a Wahila. While camped in the remote valley, Graves and a Dean guide were hunting. Graves remained on a grassy plateau as his guide went ahead with a dog. Suddenly, an enormous snow-white animal emerged from nearby brush. At first, he mistook it for a polar bear, but soon realized it was an unusually large, wolf-like creature with long legs, a wide, flat head, and small ears. Graves, armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, fired at the beast from close range. The creature barely flinched. It showed no sign of injury and calmly turned away into the trees even after a second shot. Graves's indigenous guide rushed back upon hearing the shots. When told what happened, the guide grew alarmed and insisted they leave immediately. He explained that the white beast was no ordinary wolf, but a known creature of local legend. They are extremely rare, almost impossible to kill, and some are said to live year-round in the Mackenzie Mountains. Graves later described the creature as a wolf on steroids for its massive build and uncanny resilience. Among indigenous communities, the Wahila is considered a spiritual enforcer, an omen of death, a guardian of sacred ground, or even a shape-shifting entity tied to the land itself. If the Wahila is ever seen, it is already too late. But the Wahila is not the only creature said to stalk these canyons. Witnesses describe short, muscular humanoids covered in thick black hair with wide faces and deep-set eyes. They walk upright, communicate in rapid, unintelligible language, and vanish the moment you try to follow. These are the Nuklook, another cryptid native to Nahanni legend. Unlike Sasquatch reports in other regions, the Nuklook appear smaller and more aggressive. Accounts of these strange cryptids have persisted throughout the Nahanni region for generations, and those who crossed its path never forgot. It was spring 1964 at Fort Liard, a quiet settlement just northwest of the Nahanni River basin. The forest was still and damp with melt. A Dean trapper named John Baptist moved carefully through the timberline, scanning for signs of movement. Then, he froze. Just 20 feet away stood a figure, short, broad, and hairy, its face framed by a tangled black beard. It was human, but not. It had no clothes. Its eyes met his for a heartbeat. Then it growled and disappeared into the trees. Baptist later described it, stating, "It was no man, it was something else." Just weeks later, another encounter, another face at the edge of reason. At Nahanni Butte, where the South Nahanni River snakes along the edge of the mountains, in a cabin on the riverbank, a Dean woman was weaving a birch basket. The evening was quiet. Then, without warning, she felt watched. She looked to the window. Something was staring in, a broad, hairy face with deep-set eyes. It didn't blink. She leapt up, grabbed her children, and ran outside. But the thing was gone. Only silence was left, and the memory of that face. Summer passed, and in autumn, the watchers returned once again, just east of Fort Simpson, where the Mackenzie River meets the edge of Nahanni. A 14-year-old boy named Jerry and his father were checking their dog's frantic barking when they saw it. Standing just beyond the clearing was a squat figure, no more than 5 feet tall. Covered in black hair, it wore a crude hide around its waist and clutched a stone club. It stood still as a statue, watching. Then the dog barked again, and it was gone. No footsteps, no sound. Just a gap in the trees where something had been. To this day, the locals call them Nuklook, the bushmen. They walk like us, but they are not us. And when they come, they never come close. They just watch. But not all who enter the valley encounter watchers. Some don't see anything at all. They simply vanish. Beyond the cryptids, the region is marked by a chilling history of disappearances, sudden, unexplained, and permanent. In 1926, a woman named Annie Laferte joined a hunting party into the valley. One morning, she simply vanished from camp. After days of searching, one hunter claimed to see her, high on a cliff, crawling on all fours, naked, wild-eyed, before she darted into the brush. She was never found again. Some say she went mad. Others believe something in the valley took her, changed her. 2 years later, in 1928, Hunter Angus Hall disappeared while tracking moose through a southern pass. His last known location was beside a frozen creek. His tracks ended in the snow. No sign of a fall, no blood, no gear. Just gone. In 1936, Joe Mulholland and Bill Epier vanished while working a trapline near Glacier Lake. Their camp was later found burned to the ground, with no human remains. The lake was frozen solid. They'd had food, fuel, and weapons. Yet they were also never seen again. And in 1961, Orville Bill Webb and Tom Pappas went missing while hiking overland toward Nahanni Butte. They were low on food, but not inexperienced. No wreckage, no clothing, and no bones. Only empty silence where a trail should have been. For each of these stories, there are no clear endings, just half-finished camps, burnt shelters, footprints that end mid-stride, and a forest that keeps what it claims. Even those who scoff at legends, who laugh off cryptids and curses, find it harder to explain the lights. From as early as the 1920s, trappers, bush pilots, and park officials have reported seeing mysterious lights dancing above the ridgelines. These were not shooting stars, lanterns, or any known aircraft. Witnesses described them as glowing orbs, usually orange or bluish in color, that moved against the wind, hovered silently, or dropped suddenly behind the canyons, only to reappear miles away moments later. Even today, local guides and passing aircraft occasionally report the same phenomena. Soft, glowing spheres hovering in complete silence, drifting just above the treetops before vanishing into the mist. Some believe they're atmospheric anomalies. Others think they're something far older, what the dean referred to as spirit lights, warnings that the land is watching. But the most ominous aerial mystery occurred in 1962. That year, multiple aircraft incidents earned one stretch of the mountains a grim new name: the Funeral Range. In January 1962, documentary filmmaker Angus Blake Mackenzie crash-landed his Cessna 180 near Macmillan Lake, just west of the Nahanni Range. He survived the crash unharmed, kept a detailed journal, and waited over a month for rescue. But when a search party finally reached the wreckage, Mackenzie was gone. His camp was still intact. His journal, marked up to day 42, remained beside his gear. There was no sign of a struggle, no body, nothing. That same year, another aircraft crashed in a nearby section of the range. Rescuers found one body inside the wreckage, but 3 others, passengers and the pilot, were never found. Despite exhaustive searches by air and land, no trace of them was ever recovered. To this day, those events remain unsolved. Among the Dean, it is said that these lights are not objects, but gateways, windows between worlds, places where the veil is thin and something else might come through. In fact, there are some who believe the lights aren't watching us at all, but rather waiting. Whatever they are, they tend to persist, and they are not leaving. So what explains the disappearances, the headless bodies, and the glowing lights in the sky? The truth is, no one really knows. But over the years, a number of theories have emerged, some scientific, some supernatural, but all of them disturbing. One theory suggests that the Nahanni Valley sits on a magnetic anomaly, a place where the Earth's natural forces bend radio signals, distort time perception, and trigger hallucinations. Some researchers have pointed to rare mineral concentrations underground, possibly interfering with electrical equipment and the human brain itself. But that doesn't explain the missing heads. Others believe the region is a natural energy portal, similar to what's claimed about Skinwalker Ranch. These are places where reality seems to thin, where dimensions bleed into one another, where time, space, and even life itself don't follow the normal rules. And then there are those who point to a more ancient explanation. The land remembers, they say. And whether by spirit, creature, or force unknown, the Nahanni doesn't welcome outsiders, not without cost. To this day, even as satellite images map every inch of the globe, there are no towns, no permanent structures, and no trails through the valley. People pass over it, but no one stays. The more time you spend in the Nahanni, the more you begin to understand what the locals have always known. It is a place of warnings, of boundaries, and those who push past them don't often get the chance to warn anyone else. In an age of high-tech exploration and global surveillance, true mystery is rare. But in the remote wilds of northern Canada, it still lives. The Nahanni Valley offers no explanation for the vanished, no answers for the mutilated, and no closure for the families still waiting. It just exists, vast, unchanged, and unforgiving. And perhaps that's what makes it even more chilling than Skinwalker Ranch. Because unlike that place, surrounded by cameras, studied by scientists, and spotlighted by shows, the Nahanni has stayed silent. It doesn't perform for attention. It doesn't ask to be solved. It just waits. The Dean believed it was a sacred boundary, a place where the spirit world and the physical world blurred, where laws, natural and otherwise, no longer apply. And those who cross that line, they don't just risk getting lost, they risk being claimed. This is Canada's Skinwalker Ranch, and its secrets remain buried in the valley of the headless men.